Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with something we all know to be true, a kind of universal truth.
Mhm.
Encountering difficult people, the stonewallers, the attackers, the manipulators, that's not some rare exception in our professional lives.
No, it's the daily reality. It really is.
And because that conflict is just constant, so is negotiation.
Right. And we tend to think negotiation is for, big contracts or corporate mergers.
Huge deals, yeah.
But the sources we've looked at today, they really remind us that you're negotiating all the time. With a colleague on a deadline, with your boss about what's a priority.
Even with a client who suddenly wants to change everything halfway through a project.
Exactly. And in every single one of those moments, when you hit that wall of resistance, you have a choice.
Right. Do I push back and risk a complete stalemate, or do I just give in and sacrifice what I'm trying to achieve?
Well, there's a third way. And that's what we're getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into the work of William Ury, who co-authored that landmark book, Getting to Yes.
Our mission today is to really distill Ury's strategy for you, for the modern professional. The question is, how do you turn these high conflict situations into, well, actual cooperation?
And critically, how do you do it without surrendering or escalating the fight?
Ury's first big insight, right off the bat, it sort of challenges our gut instinct. He says successful people don't try to avoid these difficult personalities.
They learn how to navigate them
Yeah.
skillfully, and they realize the first battle isn't even with the other person.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my gut reaction when someone attacks my proposal is to meet that pressure with more pressure.
Of course, you want to argue back.
I want to argue, I want to cite my authority, maybe threaten a consequence. But
Right.
Ury says that push-pull dynamic is the trap.
It is the trap. He says the main challenge isn't the other person, it's your reaction.
My reaction.
It absolutely is. I mean, think about it. When you face that aggression or that defensiveness, your body just takes over.
Yeah.
You enter what he calls the destructive loop.
Tell me about that loop.
Their hard behavior triggers your hard behavior. And suddenly the conflict is just feeding itself. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
So the breakthrough has to start with me, internally. If I'm the one who stops reacting, I can break that cycle.
Precisely. Ury is so clear on this. The problem you're fighting isn't just their bad behavior. It's the fact that you keep feeding it by playing on their emotional level.
So if I can just step back, break my own pattern.
You take control of the interaction immediately.
But to influence them, we have to understand where that resistance is coming from. I mean, what's
Yeah.
hiding behind that hard no? What are we actually fighting?
You can't plant the seeds of agreement until you understand the roots of their resistance. And the sources, they really highlight that a lot of this is just a defense mechanism.
So it's not always deliberate hostility.
Rarely. It's usually a mix of things. It could be negative emotions, fear, anger, frustration. It could be a really rigid, learned win-lose way of thinking. Or, and this is huge in professional settings,
Let me guess. The fear of losing face.
the fear of losing face. That feeling that if you give in, you look weak. And that fear is incredibly powerful.
So if we can just internalize that this difficult behavior is often defensive, not malicious.
It gives you a massive strategic advantage.
Because I stop taking it personally.
Exactly. You stop reacting to the attack,
Yeah.
and you start strategically addressing the underlying fear. And this leads right into the framework Ury gives us for overcoming these problems. He lays out 5 key obstacles.
Okay, I think we should spend a minute on these because they really map out the entire strategy.
They do. Okay, so number 1 is your reaction. You have to stay in control.
Right.
Second, their emotion. You have to help them get their balance back. Third is their position, shifting from their demand to their interests.
Okay.
Fourth, their dissatisfaction. You have to make it easy for them to say yes. And finally, number 5 is their power. You have to show them the real cost of saying no.
What's so brilliant about this is the order. The first 2 steps are all about managing emotions, yours and theirs, before you even talk about the issue. Most of us jump right to obstacle 3. We start arguing about positions, and that's why we fail.
You can't reason with someone who is flooded with fear or anger. It's impossible. You have to stabilize the environment first, which leads us to the first, very counterintuitive step.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because step 1 isn't about them at all. It's about us.
Step 1 is go to the balcony.
Define that for us. What does that look like in, say, a tense meeting?
The balcony is a metaphor for a mental timeout. It's stepping back from the stage to regain your balance. So if someone slams a folder on the table or makes a cutting remark,
You don't jump in?
you don't. You pause. You take a breath. You mentally go to the balcony and just observe. It's the difference between responding strategically and just reacting on impulse.
And while I'm on this metaphorical balcony, what am I doing? What's the goal?
You're doing three things. You're observing the situation clearly, like a chess player seeing the whole board. You're clarifying your own core interests. What do I absolutely need to get out of this? And crucially, you're identifying your BATNA.
Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. I want to pause on BATNA because I think a lot of professionals get this wrong.
How so?
They see it as a threat, something you hold over the other person's head.
And it's the exact opposite. User teaches that your BATNA is your source of quiet power. It's your confidence. If you know you have a solid, reasonable alternative if this deal falls through.
You don't have to be desperate.
You don't need to be aggressive. You can stay calm. You can be patient because you know your walkaway point. And that inner confidence is far more influential than any threat.
So that initial pause, that trip to the balcony, that's the whole foundation. Once we're calm and centered, we can move to step 2. And this one might be the hardest for driven, goal-oriented people.
Stepping to their side.
Right. How do we do that? How do you practice, radical empathy with someone who's being difficult without just encouraging them to be more demanding? That's a real fear.
It's a very important question. And the key is to separate the person from their position. You listen actively, not to figure out your rebuttal, but to actually understand.
So I'm not listening to argue. I'm listening to hear.
You're listening to hear. You acknowledge their feelings. You validate their frustration, their anger, their fear. You might say something like, I can see how frustrating the lack of resources has been.
Or I understand why you're so angry about that delay.
Exactly. You are validating the emotion, not agreeing with their claim. You're not saying, you're right, you deserve a 20% raise. You're saying, I hear you, and I understand why you feel undervalued.
And when they feel heard, they stop needing to shout.
The emotional temperature in the room just drops. You start to transform an adversary into a potential collaborator just by showing respect. And once you've built that fragile bridge, you can move to step 3.
Which is where we get into the intellectual heavy lifting. Don't reject. Reframe.
Yes. When you're faced with that hardline stance that take it or leave it.
Don't push back. Redirect.
Pushing back just makes them dig their heels in even deeper. Reframing is the art of pivoting the conversation away from what they're demanding and toward why they're demanding it. Their interests.
Let's make this tangible. Say a department head insists they need a $5 million budget and they won't even discuss anything less. How do you reframe that?
Okay. The position is $5 million. The underlying interest might be job security for their team, or maybe it's reputational protection if the project fails. So instead of attacking the number,
You ask a different kind of question.
you ask a problem-solving question. Something like, help me understand what that $5 million achieves for your team. What specific risks does that number help us mitigate over the next couple of years?
That's a huge shift. You're not enemies anymore. Your partner's looking at a problem.
You are. Or another technique is to bring up a shared problem. So instead of why do you need $5 million, you might say, given the pressure we're both under from the board, how can we structure this investment so it shows a really quick return? You're changing the game from me versus you to us versus the problem.
So we've reframed the problem. We've found a potential solution that meets both our interests. But they're still hesitating. They don't want to look weak, especially to their own team.
And that is the political reality of almost any negotiation. Which brings us to step 4. Build them a golden bridge.
This feels like the most sophisticated step. It's about ego.
It's almost always about ego and optics. They resist a good deal because they weren't involved in creating it, or they need to spin it as a win. And Ury says something profound here. People will go to war to avoid humiliation.
But they will happily cross a bridge that allows them to preserve their dignity.
That's it. So you have to build that bridge for them.
How? What does a golden bridge look like in practice?
You involve them. You incorporate their ideas, their language into the final solution. You give them the credit. You let them make the announcement. Let's say they demanded a certain feature and you came up with a better alternative. You don't call it my solution. You call it the integrated strategy, building on the core principles you identified.
You're letting them co-author the win.
You are making it their victory. You go slow to go fast. You sacrifice a little bit of credit to gain a huge amount of commitment.
But what if? What if you do all of that? You go to the balcony, you step to their side, you reframe, you build this beautiful golden bridge, And they still won't cross. They still resist.
That brings us to the final step. Step 5. This is where you have to use your power, but constructively. The goal is to bring them to their senses, not their knees.
And this is where the BTNA comes back into play, but this time you're using it externally.
Yes, but with the mindset of a leader, not an attacker. You are using your power to educate them about the reality of the situation, not to punish them. You ask reality testing questions.
Give me an example of one of those. Let's say they're just refusing to sign off on a project plan we both need.
An aggressive response would be, if you don't sign this, I'm going to your boss.
Right. The
Yeah.
threat.
The constructive reality testing question would be to ask, calmly, if we can't get this signed off today, can we just walk through what the impact on our shared Q3 targets will be? And if that happens, what's our best case scenario?
You're making them visualize the consequences of their own inaction, the pain of their resistance.
You're helping them see the cliff they're walking towards. You demonstrate your BAT&A quietly. You make it clear that continuing to obstruct hurts their interests more than it hurts yours. And that's why Ury says, your goal is not to win over him, but to win him over.
That one distinction, that changes everything. It reframes the entire purpose of conflict.
And when you put all these pieces together, the essence of it is really clear. Instead of using direct force to change their mind, you change the environment in which they make their decision.
You're influencing their choice.
Which is why influence will always beat raw authority in the modern workplace.
And this applies everywhere. Team leaders, HR, sales executives, anyone trying to turn a no into a yes.
The beauty is that it puts the control back in your hands. You're not depending on them to be reasonable. You're depending on your own disciplined process. The secret isn't controlling them.
It's controlling yourself.
It's controlling yourself.
Okay, let's try to boil this down into some really actionable takeaways. 9 key nuggets someone can use tomorrow.
Great idea. So number 1, prioritize the pause. That 5-second trip to the balcony can prevent a 5-day conflict.
2, validate their frustrations. It is the fastest way to disarm anger.
3, redirect from positions to interests. Always shift from what I want to why I want it.
4, share control and give credit. People will defend what they help create.
5, maintain respect even when you're disrespected. Respect is influence. Disrespect is just gasoline on the fire.
6, use your BAT&A with quiet confidence. Power works best when it's felt, not shouted.
7, make cooperation feel easy. Frame your solution as their win.
8, help them save face. Always, always provide a dignified exit.
And finally, number 9, aim to win them over, not against them. You're aiming for a sustainable partnership, not a short-term victory. This whole framework, it's really modern leadership in action. It's emotional intelligence under pressure.
The people who master this, they're the ones who solve the conflicts everyone else avoids. They influence the decisions others can't. By focusing on creating the right conditions, you're not just managing a negotiation, you're leading.
You move from being a manager of conflict to an architect of consensus.
And that wraps our deep dive for today. We've seen this incredibly powerful link between ego and negotiation, how far people will go to avoid humiliation. So a final thought for you to mull over. How often might a conflict you're facing be solved, not by finding a better deal, but simply by providing your opponent a more graceful, a more dignified escape route? Something to think about until our next deep dive.